and we ended the school year with 225 kids there. Like, that is a lot of growth. And then you get the early on grade level. And you add those kids to the mix who have made up a lot of growth as well. And then still diminishing that red without too many of the kids getting stuck in the yellow at 1 year behind. Like, a lot of them have leapfrogged over that. That's not to diminish the 27% because, now they're going to come into us next year 1 grade level behind and hopefully no summer slide. So we'll do the diagnostic again in the fall. Yes, I was going to say, like, when you talk about the Imagination Library and, like, some of those things that the foundation's doing and the packets that we sent home with our first graders, like, it had math stuff in it, it had reading, some other activities in it. So hopefully that helps with some of the summer slide. So that is elementary math. Any questions on that? Okay. So then we get into okay, so on the middle school math, then you will see the national data going across. So we talked about 8th grade. You'll see, the national average is 19%, and we're at 15. That's not great. Even with early on grade level, we're only sitting at 32% in 8th grade. 7th grade is only at 15%. Now they have a higher percentage that are early on grade level, and then 6th grade pretty close to the national averages, except for maybe the early on 6th grade. The only, I would say, bright spot for 8th grade is if you look at the national average, and then we'll go and we'll do the comparison, but they're at 41% for 2 or more grade levels below, and we're at 27. So we have more kids sitting in that, like, 1 grade level below. So some of those earlier interventions, small group differentiation, so we just have a bigger span of kids sitting in that 1 grade level below. So really trying to shore up, and I think also that speaks to why we needed the pre-algebra class for next year. You guys had approved earlier this year. Or did you guys, anything else? Okay, so how did they compare from fall to spring? You can see in 7th grade, so we look at that 15%, that they were starting at less than 1%. And then 6th grade started with 8% of their kids and moved it up to 25. 8th grade, not as big of a gain, started with 6% and only moved it to 15%. I think, like, if you still look at it though, the number of kids who started at the beginning of the year in 8th grade with 42% down to 26% that are 2 or more grade levels behind. So, I mean, and that's the goal was to, catch them up. Yeah, see growth and catch them up and work to get them on grade level. So, but some of these kids are making 2 years worth of growth in 1 year. A lot of them. If they're leapfrogging over that yellow into the early bond grade level.
And it's nice to see this because I know that we've known there's been an issue and a problem with our math and reading the last couple of years. But I feel like this iReady is really showing a lot of information and trying to figure out where to hone in. I mean,
and she can give you all the specific information on the standards.
Right.
Right. So I'm giving you guys, right, the global data.
Yes.
But what we can do is we can actually drill down into every math standard, the big anchors. of where these kids are falling short, and we can drill down to each specific kid.
Right.
So this is what Judy Berryman was weak in, and this is what she was strong in. So we can drill down to every kid, every teacher's classes. So that's where we get the nitty gritty
Yeah.
data that we need,
Right.
and helps with some of the placement in courses as well.
It just seems like you responded much more.
Yeah, so what you guys, and I apologize if I didn't share this before, but what you guys don't see is behind the scenes too, is when we get this data, our teachers have resources through iReady that lets them break their kids down into 4 quadrants. And it's, who are my high flyers up here that I need to keep pushing? Who are my low performing and low growth kids in this one? Who are my high performing but not growing kids? And what am I doing with them? So they can also, they look at all their kids, they break them down into those 4 quadrants, and then how do I differentiate for those 4 groups? And then, while still supporting the high kids. So how are all 4 of those groups getting differentiated? And then we also take, the darker green up there are the kids who have the high likelihood to be proficient on the PSSAs. So one of the things that we did as well is the kids who are in the light green, so what we generally term as our bubble kids, like the kids who are with extra supports or interventions can move up a level. So like, what could we do to help those kids into proficiency while still helping everybody else also move up their grade levels? So because the dark green, again, are the highly likely to be proficient on PSSAs. And then the lighter green, it really depends on where their end score was, like how close they were to the cut score to the dark green. Depends on their level of likelihood to be proficient. So, and we'll have PSS data in a couple weeks. But, until the state teases everything out, that's a couple months process. But I do look forward. I'm really curious how much this correlates. Because I know that they have the studies that show the correlation, but I really want to see what it does for our kids. Carrie, I think the next one's just the bar graph that shows, again, the overall movement of the kids. Not as much movement in middle school math as we saw in the other 2, but we are still moving kids, away from that 2+ years of behind into, now you see like the decrease of the yellow was not as significant. So like some of the kids have not leapfrogged into that green area or the grade level, but still some growth there, some things to be celebrated. Again, I'm sure not, right? My computer up to speed. So, reading, better scores across the board, and much more in line with national average. 6th grade was actually above the national average. And some of this, I think, this 6th grade ELA team has done a lot of work this year in really aligning their data, their instruction according to the data. All 3 levels did, but I think it just shows that they are pretty consistent with what they're working on. The one thing that I would like to see, I mean, we see a decrease in our 2+ years behind, but I would like to see a bigger decrease than that. So that's an area that will be a focus. Again, drilling down to what anchors are they not hitting, and what curricular and instructional needs do we need to, changes do we need to make. And then, so then from fall to spring, you can see increase across the board. Not the big jumps that you see in elementary, but I think that's also to be expected. I mean, you can see that when you look at the national data. So it's not the same big jumps.
Can you go back to the national slide for just 1 second? Interesting to me, and maybe I missed it in elementary school, that the maybe it was this way, but I'm just not thinking about it in middle school. But the two grade levels and below section is significantly smaller than the 3+ grade levels.
Yeah,
Just an observation.
I'm also like, what? Yeah.
Yeah, like here, like, looks great that there's less than 1% 2 grade levels below, but there's 28%.
28% are 2 or more.
More.
Well, 3 or more actually, yeah. I don't have any answers to why, but it is.
Right, so
yeah.
like that, it's like that 12 and 13% in 6th grade, are they slipping down into the dark red as they're moving up to 8th grade?
So one of the things that I think that we need to remember with all this is all of our students across the board. So the percentage of learning support students that we currently have are typically going to fall in that area of risk. And I would just remind everybody that Mrs. Golden has created a targeted improvement plan for specifically learning support that was just impacted this year. So we're seeing the beginnings of her work in that plan, which you see some decreases there. But I just wonder what 12% or 16% of 122 is. It's about 16 kids or right around there, 15. That's going to be representative of our learning support group and those students that may not be identified and are right on the edge. So we're already, before this came out and we looked at this, Mrs. Golden was working targeting need help and assistance for those special education students.
So your estimation is that our general ed students are the yellow and above?
Typically, that's what we're
Generally
saying.
speaking, yeah.
That's a good generalization.
Yeah, and again, that's not to say that some of them are not in the 1 or 2 years behind.
Right.
Because it's scary for me to think that like 28% of all of our kids are
Right,
that far
but
behind.
28% of 130, yeah.
Right, that was a good point, that
Yeah.
the special ed population is made up of that. But we want to see them continuing to.
Oh, absolutely,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Which
And that is part of
getting
the
darker
plan.
with it.
Yeah,
Right.
give credit to Mrs. Golden for doing that.
Actually, Courtney and I were together the other day going through the data and also looking at her targeted plan. And so she has some ideas as well about, because it'll continue into next year, like some of the changes that will go into that plan for next year. And I believe Kara's done a lot of work working with the learning support teachers as well, like how to support them supporting the kids, because that's her background.
That's strange. Literally, the yellow is 21% across the board, and it's just about 28% at the bottom, all the way across the board. It's just
Yeah.
the shades of red
Yeah.
that are different.
And again, just the overall placement for reading 6th through 8th grade. And you do see, again, not the same type of movement that you saw in the lower grades, but we are moving kids across the continuum, so if they're at least moving in the right direction. All of those numbers went up from levels. Well, actually, yellow went down in a good way. Any questions on that? And that will be linked to the minutes when Gary gets this out, so everybody will be able to view that.
A nice highlighted picture instead of there. And both letters are yellow.
I just couldn't get it to not be blurry. Okay. Policy part. No, we're not.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the successful for PA early learners. So, as you can see from our data, we actually qualify for this grant based on one, our proficiency rate in the elementary school, and then also because we service K-2 as part of our title funding. So the IU had reached out to us. This is actually a federal grant that comes to the TAN, which is like an educational center in Harrisburg, and then it funnels down to the IU from that. So it's a 3-year grant, and what this does, this is how I make it a little bit more logical for people to understand. So, well, actually for myself to understand. So our K-2 teachers have been doing letters training for 2 years. So it's all about the 5 pillars for the science of reading and instructional practices. So they had a lot of theory in those classes, and then it went to some application, like how do you actually apply this into the classroom. What this grant does is has trainers come in, and they're trained in the ECRI program, ECRI, it's Enhanced Killer Reading Instruction. And so what they do is a scaffolded approach. So the first year they come in and work with kindergarten teachers, the second year it's first grade teachers, and then it's second grade teachers the third year. So what they do is they come in and they work with our teachers on the implementation of it. So what are their procedures in the classroom? What are their routines in the classroom? And when I say that, I don't mean like behavioral type things, but like how are they teaching decoding? How are they teaching the alphabet, sounds, consonant blend, beginning reading stages? So they come in and work with the kindergarten teachers on that. Then the following year they come in and work with the first grade teachers and then the second grade teachers. And so the team from ECRI comes in, they train our teachers, they train our admin team, myself included, on like when we walk through, how do we help support like when we do our walkthroughs? What are we actually looking for to be able to support our teachers, support the students in their reading journey, so that when they're going into 3rd grade, K-2, you're learning to read, 3 and above, you're reading to learn. So how do we get that nice, solid foundation, K-2, to set them up for success? I did reach out to a couple of districts one specifically in our district who is already in this. They just finished their 3rd year. They did a 4-year contract. This is only offered as a 3-year contract, and they have seen so much growth in their students. When I reached out to them, I said, would you recommend us doing this? And he's like, 100%. The literacy of their kids, he said, has like exponentially grown. And then I actually had an assistant super from another district reach out today and ask me if we were doing it, because they were also offered the grant, decided not to do it this year, but after talking with me and the district I talked to, they are going to apply for it next year. I talked to the kindergarten teachers, first grade teachers, second grade teachers, and our reading coach. And the classroom teachers are excited for this. They're like, we have all this professional development, and then like we're always like, how do we implement it? So they're really excited to have somebody come in and help them look at what their routines are. They'll coach them, they'll do model lessons, they'll help them break down their data. We'll have PLC meetings with them. So they were really excited. And if I forgot to mention, which I know I did, we also get paid for this grant. So we get $10,000 a year to buy resources that the teachers need to be implementing the reading.
This is state level grant.
This is a federal level grant. It's a federal level, it goes to the TAN, and then the TAN administers or distributes it from there.
So, is everyone in favor of taking advantage of this grant?
Sold.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I know I appreciate it because they were very receptive. The next thing on the agenda is for me. So Tim had recommended me for this fellowship program. It was a fellowship program he had gone through, so I applied and was accepted. And it's really to help strengthen my knowledge around like government, school business, policy, leadership, and then some decision-making, public advocacy type things, skills, communication skills. And so, and I attached the schedule. The reason I'm bringing it to you is there are a couple of overnight. One of the trainings is like a 2-day in DC. I think I could be in Harrisburg for 2 nights, and then I think the Carlisle or college or something. There you go. Anyway, so it is a year-long fellowship program, and then Tim gets to go with me next May to a graduation, if you are so inclined to.
I didn't notice this when I reviewed it last week, but looks like your predecessor in this position is one of their speakers.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And I would say that one of the key features that I found very important was the ability to reach out and actually meet with our state and federal legislators and bring up relevant information. The things that we talked about, like we talked about with CTE and getting our students training in career and technical education and those. So it'll be up to Dr. Fairman and the group that she's with on what she'll speak to them about, potentially early literacy or some other areas.
Yeah, a lot of it is virtual, so it's like an hour and a half in my office, and just on a virtual session, but there are some face-to-face components with some overnight, so I would be
Does the committee favor moving this fellowship for 2 people over to full board?
Okay.
All right, on to policies.
All right.
Most exciting portion of the meeting.
And I will say, and I know you get tired of me saying this, but these policies are fairly easy this month. So 103.1 non-discrimination is a brand new policy. We actually did not have that one. And it was pushed over through PSBA. And under delegation of responsibility, because it does, this policy is about students with disabilities, we selected Director of Pupil Services because that is where that would fall. Any questions? Policy 137.1, extracurricular participation by home education students. So what they did is they updated some language in here, like verification may include but not limited to attendance records, weekly grades, or academic achievement, or other documents demonstrating completion of eligibility. So the same as we pull eligibility for our athletes, our musicians, we would do the same and can do the same for middle school students. And
That would just come out of their homeschool records.
yeah, like we would just contact parents for updates on how they're progressing, because they do have to submit a plan every year. So we would just reach out to them on how they're doing with their plans. Any questions? 137.3, participation in career and tech programs by home education students. So this would be a student who is homeschooled but wanted to attend ACPI. So we did have, yeah, wait a minute, I got an order. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I apologize, I think I had two together here.
Yeah, jump to that, that's fine. Why don't you, one second, because that's 103 right now.
We can do that, yeah, we can do 3 now.
Yeah, I still have to find two because I think it's stuck together. One. Sorry. Did you want me to stay on 137.3?
If that's okay with you.
Yeah, that's fine. Sorry about that.